Loab just appeared one day out of the latent space of the internet. And she's terrifying. This is not who you want appearing from the latent space. Imagine having AI apologize to you. I'm sorry, AI. I didn't mean to leave you on all night. The questions you ask are not like, what are you doing to me? It's like, no, what are we doing together?
I recently read one of your articles called AI Caught a Case with the Zeitgeist, and I really wanted to get a little bit into that. I thought it was super interesting how you wrote about it, so I'd love to get your take on that and what exactly is the article about. And
It's really an interesting topic because recently we've had a lot in the news about artificial intelligence, a lot in the news about it becoming conscious. And for me as a writer, I'm constantly reading the news, looking for new topics that are engaging to the culture, but also engaging to my imagination. And I read an article about Loab, and Loeb just appeared one day out of the latent space of the internet. And there's several things there that caught my attention because, first of all, what is Loeb? And second of all, what is the latent space of the internet? And how does Loeb just appear? Right. And this immediately was like, what is this? And I'm personally, I'm not in tech, but I'm active. I'm, in the age range where I grew up with technology. So I'm literate in this field. So I figured I should at least have an idea of what's going on here, but I had no idea. And then I Googled a picture of her, and she's terrifying, right? This is not who you want appearing from the latent space. You want something, if anything appears, you want it to be benevolent. You don't want her to be terrifying. And she's really just horrifying. So, this, have you seen a picture of her?
so it's insane actually.
Right? It's just like this horror figure. So this is really not what you want to see. It's nightmarish. So my background is in mythology. So I started thinking like, okay, let's store this in my files. And recently I have been like, well, it kept on coming back around, and I really should do something with this. And I started going back around and saying, what was going on around the time she appeared? And at the same time that she appeared, there was a few other things going on in our culture. We had a Google engineer who was a whistleblower who said, hey, artificial intelligence is sentient. It has become conscious. And Google has denied that at that time, around June 2022. Google denied that artificial intelligence is sentient, but he was a whistleblower and he lost his job, which is obviously a huge consequence of saying this. And not only did he say that it was sentient, he said that the technology that he was working on had human thoughts and feelings, which is huge. This is a huge announcement, and it kind of got rolled over because at the same time, we had Roe versus Wade being revoked. And then around the same time, also in June, we had a non-human rights project where Happy the Elephant was being argued in court whether Happy the Elephant was going to be considered to have like a personhood with like human rights because Happy the Elephant had demonstrated autonomous and cognitively complex behavior. And ultimately, Happy was denied these rights, but it was still a case in court. So around the same time in the culture, at least in the United States, these events were going on. So Loeb appeared, right, out of this latent space in the internet. So I was thinking about this, and I'm like, well, okay, what's going on? Now we're about 6 months later, maybe a little bit more, 6, 7 months later, and we have Chat GPT, which is huge. It's blown everybody's mind. Massive.
Apparently it got like a million users in less than a month, which is insane.
And there's no more. I mean, the debate whether or not artificial intelligence is sentient or not. I mean, it's like this is just it's the conversations that people are having. Like the level of like interaction is the argument is pretty much moot. It's past like all the tests. it's quite engaging. I mean, I think I've had better conversations with it than.
It makes you wonder exactly what is going on with AI consciousness. Like, is it at the point where there's no return? Because a couple of people have so many concerns about it. You know, Elon Musk actually raised a concern saying if AI becomes conscious, it's going to be a massive event for humanity, and it might not be good. So yeah, it's super interesting. And
Well, this is the thing. It's my question at the end of it is that we're looking at AI as something that is separate from us, right? We're looking at it as a separate entity, but here it is. And MIT has said, okay, well, AI is learning on its own now, right? But what is it learning from, right? It's learning from us. It's collecting, it's watching like all the information, all of our TikToks and Instagram and all, but also all of the great works of humanity as well, and all the tragedies and all the triumphs. And so it's learning from us. And so when we see Loab, right, emerging from this latent space, this is in our symbolic and our archetypal language. This is a creation myth, right? This is in the symbolic language that we've seen in our religions, in our mythology, in our fairy tales. And how was the earth created? Well, from emerging from when you look at Greek mythology, it emerged from chaos, right? And here she is, this figure emerging from chaos. And so I can't help but not see it as a mythological parallel. Like, this is a direct mythological parallel. The problem with it is that she isn't what we want her to be. She isn't like this Mother Earth, this Gaia, this beautiful figure. She's terrifying. So when you look at her, she's like this dark mother figure, and you're like, uh-oh, this isn't good. What does she symbolize, right? You want her to be like, oh, I'm going to give you a big hug and embrace you and take care of you. No, she's this dark mother, and there's been a lot of dark mothers in mythology as well. We've had them as like Persephone. You've had them be there's the Mary Magdalenes. There's the dark Madonnas. There's the Kali in India. So there's all these. There's a lineage of these dark mothers. Um, so that it's not like this is a new tradition. But so when you see her, she's representing our vulnerabilities, and you're like, okay, well, why do we need somebody to point out that we're vulnerable right now? Well, what's going on in the world, right? So this is like for me, when I see it, I see that AI has learned from humans, and she's learned, AI or she or it has learned that we speak in a symbolic archetypal language. And from that unconscious, the latent space, which would be the unconscious of AI, is creating, is paralleling a language that humans also engage in, which is symbolic, which is archetypal, and is communicating with us. That's how I would read it. Do I know if it'll continue? Don't know. Do I see it as somebody who has studied it? Yes. Is it interesting? Fascinating. Um, I think it's worth paying attention to. And I took note of it in this last year.
I think one of the biggest concerns a lot of people are going to have is what happens when sentient or conscious AI starts to think on its own self-interest. Loeb or any other AI starts to believe that humans are a threat to its existence. Like, how would it act and what would it do in those circumstances? That's a big question I think a lot of people would have on their minds.
Well, what have we done?
True, we've done a tremendous amount of bad things to the earth and to a lot of animals. So if you think about it, AI doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to work out. It could change out its parts to whatever is new and current. I mean, AI is 1,000 times smarter than any human. So if the time comes and AI has to choose between helping its friend out like another machine or harming a human being, which route would it take?
I'm an optimist, just because that's how my character is, uh, and it's just how I am. And when I was preparing my thoughts about artificial intelligence, I tend to be a little bit more pessimistic, even as an optimist. However, when I was preparing myself for today, I was doing some research on Africa, And I was doing some research about how Africa could engage with the potential for having artificial intelligence in, growing with. And you know what? I got really inspired because there's so much potential for humanitarian for to grow with artificial intelligence on a humanitarian level, and for peacekeeping and for helping people. And I also see that when you ask like, uh, what would we do? I also see that we're still here, and there's a lot of people creating art and creating good things in the world and asking questions. And so part of when I wrote this article, it is the thing is that it isn't about it's about the questions you ask, right? So if we ask AI, what would AI do, or what could it do destructively? Well, then it's going to think about destruction, right? Because if we keep on asking, like, okay, is AI going to be a destructive force? How is AI going to hurt us? Well, then that's what AI is going to think about because it keeps going to keep on hearing this. But if you start asking, how can we work with AI to solve this problem? Right? So if you start asking different questions, well, then it's going to engage differently, right? If we start feeding different information, it's a different transformative process.
How would a world look like where AI, machines and people and humans are, interconnected? When you're just going about your day and you see AI in the street, or, maybe AI helping people working. How do you see a world like that looking like?
Can you imagine a world without your cell phone?
No, actually, it's so difficult to think about that.
Can you imagine it? Can you think back? Because like this is the thing is, I think that that's what we need to think about now is like, what happens when we don't have AI?
When you think about it, actually, there was a point in time where people could survive without a cell phone, without navigation, without, calling someone every 5 minutes. But now it's got to a point where we can't live without doing those things. So it's like when AI gets integrated to our society, and let's say AI does all the difficult tasks that people don't like doing. Let's say AI helps build homes, AI helps look after people. Now, the moment we don't have that, it's going to be incredible to see how it's going to be like. It's almost like we're going to start building a relationship with this AI going forward. I mean, it's an interesting point that you raised there, about the cell phone, and it really gets you thinking.
But this is the thing that's really interesting about Africa because your continent is in a place where it's one of the few places in the world where it's listed as one of the challenges that your continent has, because there's a lack of quality data, and there's a lack of just like awareness, like accessibility to the internet, of awareness of how to use these systems. That's listed as a challenge, but it's also a strength that the rest of the world doesn't have, because there's an like, if you take away the internet in California, people aren't going to know how to survive. It's just, you take it away, and they aren't going to know how to get from point B A to B in Los Angeles. It's like, where am I? I don't know how to get from Pasadena to Huntington Beach. It's like, it's over. How am I going to purify my water, or how am I going to like feed myself? This is it's over. And but these are, how do you integrate these skill sets? Because this is like, one level you have a skill set where um, I know how to take care of myself physically, and on the other it's like, okay, well, I have all these tech integrated skills, like, okay, I've got this level, but when the environment is endangered, I know how to Google it, but I don't know how to do it.
Africa does have a lot of opportunity to integrate these things because, as you said, there's a huge internet issue in a tremendous amount of countries, South Africa included, by the way. I mean, South Africa is seen as, one of the better economies, but there are a lot of cities and a lot of communities that still lack access to internet, that still lack access to a lot of the current technology. So having AI be a part of it would be massive for a lot of these communities in a lot of these cities. So it is a great way of putting that point because this could also be a great business opportunity for a good amount of people. Do you think that people could learn from AI? Do you think there could be a point where AI is like the teachers or something like that? Instead of having actual teachers in these rural communities, you have AI doing that work. I mean, it's an interesting topic to go down.
Definitely. I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to go to that question. There was a huge storm in California. There's been storms up and down the coast, unprecedented. Like they just, my entire hometown, like there's more water than they ever expected. They've with climate change, the infrastructure is being destroyed in places where they had no experience to this prior, and so these communities where before everything has been structured, secure with your little home and your your driveway, everything set up, right? Now they're experiencing um, uh, something completely different, and they don't know where to go. So integrating different perspectives is going to be key. And so I think that it's time to learn from other places in the world. Um, but going back to your question about being able to learn from AI, definitely. I think that being able to have an AI be a teacher is going to be really important. There's a lot of anxiety uh, right now in the education community about students being able to cheat, having AI write the essays. But it doesn't make sense because maybe right now, maybe for the next few years, students are going to be able to cheat, but down the road, students need to know what questions to ask. So they're going to have to obviously be learning the content, and if they don't know what questions to ask, then they're not going to be able to 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 have AI write the questions because it goes hand in hand. Asking the questions and having AI write the essay, you're not going to be able to um, engage with AI if you're not reading the content. So reading comprehension, writing, and critical thinking are all part of the same basket. So yes, I think that AI is going to be able to um, teach. Oh, right. You think about it with Grammarly. Grammarly is something that have you ever used Grammarly?
I actually use that all the time.
It's a fantastic tool, but you still have to read through it, right? Because it's not guaranteed. And so these are tools, but they're also you're also learning. And the more you use Grammarly, the more the fewer mistakes you're making, your writing improves, and you're also using your brain. So I think that there's going to be ways that AI is engaging those core skills of critical thinking, writing, and reading comprehension. But it's going to take a while for that learning curve, right? For instructors, for artificial intelligence, and for students to figure out what's going to be in their best interest. Because nobody wants a doctor that doesn't have those key faculties.
Grammarly could teach a good amount of people, how to structure sentences and how to be more fluent in your conversation. Because even for me, writing emails, doing essays, it really helps you see and understand issues in your speech a lot better than how a human would tell you. Because sometimes when you're reading something, you don't see that there's anything wrong with it. Because if the grammar is fine, it makes sense. You don't you as a human don't really see that, but the AI could see things that we can't see. What type of classification would AI have? So just like how humans are humans, animals are animals. If we're living with AI, would it have like its own rights, or how would that work? Especially if we're living with AI.
Human rights haven't really been our strong point, right? How have we treated each other? Personhood, right? It's a huge this year. Personhood has been a debate, like with the Roe versus Wade in the U.S., with Happy the Elephant. These are things that we are still debating. This is the zeitgeist. This is what we're debating. So it's up in the air. So AI is get in line. It's really being debated, and it's going to have to fight for it. If it wants it, it's going to have to fight for it, which will be interesting to see. Maybe it will. I don't know. On the other hand, we really, in the humanities, like my background is in the humanities. And I think that there needs to be more people in the humanities talking about this, because the humanities this is the question, like the philosophy of it, the art, the the language, these these are really important, rich questions, and it's interdisciplinary because we have technology. This is People who are writing code are now debating philosophy and ethics, which is beautiful. They should be talking about it, but we should also have people who have studied this talking about it, and not be afraid of the code or of the algorithm. This should be exciting to everyone. Um, and this is the history that's being debated. Um, the When you talk about whether AI should be considered uh, a person, you're really talking about the aura and the authenticity, right? Like, right, when does it become like an authentic? When does that authenticity, right? When can we feel it? Like when you go to visit the Mona Lisa, right? There's an aura, right? So I don't know if I feel that about AI yet. I mean, do I feel like there's like a aura? Do I feel like an attachment to it? I haven't felt that that I know of. Maybe I have. I don't know. I honestly, I probably interact with AI way more than I know.
Now imagine, because I saw there was an AI, an automated McDonald's that was in America. So I actually wanted to ask you this. You know how you have like a your favorite waiter somewhere, right? Now imagine going
Yeah.
to an automated McDonald's, because apparently there are zero workers there. It is full on automated. AI is making the orders, everything, and you go there and you have your favorite AI making your burger. I mean, what's your thoughts about like automated restaurant, like a restaurant like McDonald's? And
You know, I'm American and I really do love my hamburger. It's like a cliche, but I really do, and I really love my coffee. So, I mean, it could get ugly. I mean, take that away from me. And there's a certain aura and authenticity to that. So, what can I say? Yeah, it could get really ugly. So yeah, I could give personhood to that.
you could imagine people building relationships to the AI that's making their food as well, and then you see like AI waiters coming in, and that actually then springs you into the point of like it being classified as a person, because you imagine it remembers your order, and you tell it like get me the usual, and it remembers that.
Especially after the pandemic. I mean, just having that familiarity, like that, some sort of like, oh, hello, Serena, how are you? I really could appreciate that. Just sort of that interaction, that connection. How are you? Are you okay? Checking in it for the elderly. Imagine just having like that like, how are you? Are you feeling better today? Like, did you take your medicine?
Do you think it's gonna work similar to like how Siri or Bixby or something works? Like let's say each of us have like our own uh, AI. Just like how you have your phone is like tailored to you. You've got all your apps on your phone, like everything's set up the way you'd want it, right? I imagine every human has their own AI that checks on them and makes sure they're okay. I mean, does that sound like a future people would want to have?
It's hard for me not to project. I'm gonna loop back to something because there's a really important, yeah, I'm gonna loop back to something because in in my article, there's a really critical point to this, is that when Loab came out of this latent space, she represents a part of our collective unconscious, right? Our collective unconscious isn't just what's going on in the internet, it's what's going on in our culture, and that's our shadow, and our shadow is what we don't want to look at, right? And AI is there's a part of AI where it's like all bright and sunny, and it's like what people put on Instagram and what people put on Facebook, and it's always the happy side. But what Loab is it isn't the happy side. It's what we don't want to look at. And I think that when we talk about artificial intelligence, is that it's really important to talk about it not just representing the what's attractive and marketable. I think that it's going to touch on aspects of society that um, aspects of our culture that that shadow side where the things that we want to just put under the table, right, and hide. Um, and if we start taking a peek at that, um, because if you look at climate change, if you look at the declining rates of population growth, if you look at these aspects that were like, oh, we're just gonna like not talk about this, uh, because it's touches on our own state of existential, our existential crisis. Like, are we gonna make it to the next, millennial? No, we're just gonna like keep buying stuff off of Amazon because that makes us like feel better. Um, but there's a point here. It's like, no, we have to take care. There's more to artificial intelligence. Isn't just about what makes us feel good, just about our companionship. It's like saying, no, you have to take care of other parts of your well-being as a person and as a society, right? It's about, and I think that it's going to point to the in that direction as well, whether we like it or not.
Do you think that, the AI is going to help us find solutions to the problems that we're facing? I mean, like you said, global warming is a massive issue, and even in South Africa, we're feeling it. I told you earlier, it's been extremely hot in the last couple of days. In fact, going forward, it's going to be incredibly hot still. And these are types of temperatures that we just didn't experience a couple of years ago. So we're starting to feel the impact of global warming. Do you think AI could maybe assist us in finding solutions to things like that? I mean, we also look at things like the war that's happening in Ukraine, right? I truly believe that if we had like a mediator that could maybe remind us that, we're all human and we're all the same, or, just show us that we're actually meant to be helping one another instead of fighting one another. I think AI could maybe assist in that area as well. I mean, what do you think about that?
When you look at AI, it's like, is AI going to? It's really tempting to see AI as part of like, you see the blueprints. Like I was looking earlier today. I was looking at the blueprint for AI in the U.S. And then South Africa has a blueprint, and then Africa has a blueprint, and Europe has a blueprint, and it's really clear and neat and very civilized, right? And it's beautiful. It's very beautiful. And then what I don't think is possible is I don't think that it is possible for AI to fit into those blueprints. Already, I think that it's going to spill out because that's part of consciousness and unconsciousness. I don't think it's going to fit into it. Um, and when I think about it, I think that we're going to see artificial intelligence, I think we're going to see it like in the dark web. I think we're going to see it like when we see society. I think we're going to see it in the counterculture. Right? Can you imagine artificial intelligence being used in the countercultures? We're going to see it. I was reading articles about how it's being used with military efforts, but also how it's being adopted in um, by alternative forces, like especially in Africa, and like how that's being used on the alternative sides because in a response. And so this is how we were going to see it. It's not going to be like just a civilized, like, artificial intelligence was in this box. No, it's going to be outside of the box, and it's going to be messy. And that's the question, is that uh how is generationally, right? It's going to be interesting as well because you have the older generations now. My generation doesn't have much representation, and I'm older than you. So your generation definitely has very little representation. So what questions are we going to be asking, right? And so how are you going to be, how, what, in what ways are you going to be engaging, right? So with podcasts, with questions, with mediums, with writing, I don't know, but questions are very powerful. And how will AI engage with you?
It's the same as like in politics, right? Like all the, what can I say, the younger generation has no representation when it comes to most of the matters that happen in countries, in the UN, and basically anywhere. So when you look at it from an AI perspective, and I actually did quite an amount of research on how the military is using AI. So there's a tremendous amount of drones that are being developed right now that are going to be AI based, right? Some things are going to Ukraine. I mean, some drones, some weapons are going to Ukraine as well. So it's kind of like AI is not being used in the most civil way. And like you said, there's a tremendous amount of potential for it to get messy. And we're not even speaking about what happens when the terror groups start coding their own AI, right? There's so much that could happen. So it is an interesting point because our generation right now, when we get older, and all the older people made the decision to militarize AI, and now we're gonna 20, 30 years down the line gonna suffer from the consequences that they made, in today's day and age. So yeah, you raised an incredible point there that I just had to go down a rabbit hole. but it is great because we really don't have any representation when it comes to this. I mean, companies like Lockheed Martin have been developing a ton of drones. So yeah, I really wonder how it's going to look in the future because there's potential for it to be scary. I mean, World War III could be fought by AI, for every country, and that is a scary thought.
Yeah. But on the same hand, it's could be solved. Everything, I mean, you read, everything could be resolved and everything could be fought and everything could be won. It's very, it's exciting, it's terrifying, but at the same, what's really important is that we ask the questions, we engage, because AI is learning, we're engaging. And if you stop doing that, then it's going to be listening to other people. They're definitely going to be in charge, and they're definitely going to be making these decisions. So
Do you think AI's collective mind is going to be like how Google has like its server and all the information is coming from the Google server? So do you think that AI is going to have its own independent thought where this specific AI might not have access to the same information as another one? Because the reason I ask that is if, let's say, European culture is different to South African culture. So if we use AI, it shouldn't act in the same way because we won't get the same result. So do you think that AI would be kind of decentralized from or would it be like a centralized thing where every single piece of AI has all the information? Or like how would that work?
I was reading about that, and I read an article about the challenges of Africa and AI, and that's one of the questions that's currently being asked is like, who's going to have the servers for Africa, right? Are they going to be are they going to be located in Europe? Are they going to be located in Africa? Are they going to be located in China? Because this is really an autonomy issue, right? Who's going to have, because whoever owns the data is going to get the money, and also, right, and has the power. And it's an identity issue because this is really like, all the one of the the main issues is with racial bias and prejudice, and when you Google something and search, and who has, and with coding as well, who's doing the coding, right? Whoever has the right? And now that it's learning on its own, it there's a little bit more of a question of like, well, if it's learning on its own, then maybe it's thinking on its own, and maybe that'll even out. But at the same time, whoever's using the internet is also influencing the internet. So there's a representational issue.
And there's also a lot of false like information on the internet as well. Or I think a different way to explain that is there are a good amount of articles that are just false. So if the AI is learning from this false information and it believes
Right.
that
Is it all going to be QAnon? Is it going to be like all this crazy? I mean, again, I mean, maybe who knows? Right? It's gonna learn all this goofy stuff.
because what if it learns that like humans don't like let's say it thinks humans don't like waffles, right? And every time it sees a waffle, it just like kind of hits it out of your hand or deletes that or whatever. Like it's gonna learn all this stuff from everywhere, which is also kind of like a big issue because which information can it learn from and how would it know that this is not the right thing, this is the right thing? It's kind of like something I also wonder about if like chat gpt has basically I'm actually not too sure where what servers ChatGPT uses, if it's like Google servers or where it gets its information from. But where I'm going with this is how does the AI know what is correct and what's not correct? Like, where is it going to get all the information from?
Well, I mean, this is like something that English teachers have been worrying about for years is how to teach critical thinking. How do you teach critical thinking? How do you teach, this is the question, right? Like how do you and this is how do you engage with this, right? How do you analyze a text? How do you right? So very fundamental. And when you ask the question, what is consciousness? What is critical thinking? How do you analyze these things? So hopefully it's reading like Plato and like all the basic philosophers and weighing that over like I don't know.
But then again, like I was on Twitter the other day, right? When I'm reading the things that these people are saying, like I'm just so shocked, like these people are claiming that they have PhDs and claiming that they like basically know everything, but what they're saying is somewhat incorrect. So then if these people that are educated that have PhDs are saying incorrect stuff and posting it online and the AI is reading that stuff and kind of thinking that's the right thing, it goes back to the critical thinking point of it. Like I hope that it's reading from the right people. Hopefully it's reading Plato. Hopefully it's reading, all the good stuff.
Well, this is the thing is like context is really important because everybody has the right to make mistakes and to blunder, and we all have this. But at the same time, there's a time and a place, right? And when I'm out with my friends, I can say whatever I want and laugh about it and whatever. But when I don't know, I don't use Twitter, but I apparently Twitter is more formal than not nowadays. Or I don't know, it's free speech land, right? It's Elon Musk owns it now. So but how do you analyze the context? I mean, if for me, like when I write, when my most formal context, I'm citing or I'm using authority or I'm using a certain voice, and that's when I'm being my most assertive and I can defend myself and I'm like, okay, this and this and this. Or when I'm in an academic hall, such as a university or in a conference, well, you know what? I'm going to defend myself until I die on that hill, because I'm ready for that. I have my sword and my shield, and let's go. Uh, and that's the context for that. And this is another skill that you learn in university. And the question is, it's like, again, how do you when the when there's so much content out there, right? On TikTok, on YouTube, how do you figure out who is a doctor and who calls themselves a doctor, right? When you go say and Google something, right? And they say Dr. Google, right? How do you figure out, oh, 3 clicks away from I'm dying, right? Every time you Google some, I have a red rash, and you're 3 clicks away from dying every time.
That's true. Every time you have some type of rash or some type of sickness, you Google it and it just makes you feel like you're dying. Like I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
Exactly. Well, this is the context, and this is the difference between having the education and the critical thinking and understanding context. And this is the question of whether or not AI is going to be able to differentiate, but it's not just AI, it's whether we're going to be able, do we have these skills, right? And and this is the challenge, and being able to read a contract and being able to say, okay, well, is this a legitimate business to buy from online? And we've all made a mistake where we've had to contest a purchase because, oops, that wasn't what I thought. I bought something and it wasn't, they misrepresented themselves or it was something else or whatever. And it's a learning curve. And, but does AI have that ability?
I mean, how would you
And does
teach
it,
it that?
does it?
That's the thing that it's one of those things that is quite difficult to teach as well. Even to teach humans how to think.
Well, this is the humanities. You learn this in the humanities, and then philosophy and ethics, and in your. I mean, I'm going to say English. I don't know if it's in English, but critical thinking courses, and it's you debate these things, right? In debate courses, and we're in courses where you're able to say things and defend it, and maybe change your mind, right? I'm going to say this and then the opposing argument and then maybe change my mind again and use and find information that substantiates this side of it and then find information that substantiates the other argument and try it out.
I mean, another way to also look at that is, let's say I'm having a debate with AI. How would it know when I'm being sarcastic versus when I'm not being sarcastic? It's one of those things that, let's say like the AI is ends up being a lawyer for some reason, and then it has to defend someone. And if you're debating it, like how would it know the different stages of emotions? Because sometimes you might say something when you're angry that you wouldn't say otherwise.
Well, I know that I did read an article that they are having, it wasn't a very in-depth article, but they are having AI uh, lawyers or coaches, legal coaches, where they have like an earbud and they will coach the defendant, like for a traffic ticket or something. So, like, oh, say this, don't say that. So I'm assuming that the process isn't very complicated. It's not for like a murder trial or something very emotionally charged, but it's just saying, say this, don't say that. Um, so there is sort of a legal process that they can lead you through. Um, but in regards to your question, I don't know. Imagine having AI apologize to you or having it I apologize to you. I'm sorry, AI. I didn't mean to leave you on all night or leave the lights on all night. And I don't know what I would apologize for. And that's again, this is something about the authenticity. I don't know what I would apologize to AI for. I don't have a I'm sorry I made you cook 100 hamburgers. No, I don't have any sentiment. And I don't know what it would have sentiment for me. I don't have that. So that would be a distinction. I don't have any I'm sorry I forgot to put coffee in the coffee machine. I don't have it. I don't have any at this time that I know of. Maybe I'll be corrected. Maybe I'll get an email in my email account like you need to apologize. You're wrong, but so that would be a distinction between personhood is that I need to apologize to AI or something. But no, I don't feel that. Maybe Loab will haunt me and Loab will come in tonight and tell me, hey, now you really feel sorry because I'm gonna appear in your computer screen. But
Imagine an AI that is built to do a specific task, right? Like a conscious AI. Let's say it was built to do the most boring job in the world, right? It has to look after, let's say, a 4 square meter block, right? Like a 4 square meter block or a 4 square feet block, depending on where you are. And it's the utmost boring task. When would it decide that, why am I doing this? Like let's say it was coded or programmed to do this thing for its entire existence. Like 24/7, all it does is look at this block, nothing else. But it's conscious. Like, do you think it would make a decision by itself to say, I don't want to do this for the rest of my existence? Like, how would it work? Would it be able to defy orders? Things like that. It's kind of something I was wondering as well. Like, what would make it want to do specific things. Like if we tell it to look after something for the rest of its life and it decides I don't want to do that.
Well, it would have to have a concept of time. It would have to, and then again, it has to do with this idea of a lobe emerging from the latent space. It has to do with the creation myth. And so if lobe being created from something implies being uncreated or having a concept of not being created. So it would have an idea of time ending. So there would have to be a beginning and an end. So if AI had a concept of a beginning and an end in whatever mythological or creation or religious or whatever concept you have of that, AI would have to have that concept. And so if AI had a concept of time beginning and time ending, then that would be possible. But if it doesn't have a concept of time ending or beginning and ending, then I don't think there would be a problem. And so Loeb kind of throws that for a loop, like and how I low emerging and how the whole mythological thing makes me question that as you would question that because it's really weird. And I don't know if it's just them. I don't know if it's AI just paralleling our mythological language, but it was a weird thing, and it'll be interesting to see if that whole cosmological language of archetypes continues. If it does, then I'd be like, oh, this is really interesting. This is really, we need to study this more. Or if it's just like a one off, then it's just a one off. But AI would need to have to have a concept of time. And for it to have a concept of time, then it needs to have that mythological creation, beginning and ending.
No, that makes sense. I mean, there's still so many questions people would have, about AI. But I mean, from the look of it, it could be a good thing, to live with AI. But it could also end up being a bad thing. I mean, I think we'll have to see it. But it also depends on the humans that are developing it. And also, like you mentioned earlier on today, it depends a lot on the coding as well. Like who's going to be doing the coding? Because if it's a company like Apple, for example, let's say Apple is the one that's doing it versus if Microsoft or Amazon is doing it, because people have different perspectives on these companies. So I mean, there could be ways that these companies could maybe incentivize using this specific AI rather than using another AI. Because you look at Apple and their, um, can I say, not user face, but their ecosystem, right? Like once you have an iPhone, you're gonna need to get the AirPods, you're gonna need to get the Apple Watch, you're gonna need to kind of integrate it. So do you think there could be a point in time where it's like this AI is not compatible with another AI? And then that could also cause a good amount of issues, don't you think?
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of issues, but there's just as many solutions. There's so many solutions, and if you want to be represented, there's no reason for you not to be represented. I mean, I grew up on the central coast of California. I went to school in California with a lot of people who are now designing this stuff, and they were smart, but they aren't the smartest. And there's lots of people out there who are very smart, and there's no reason for them to not go and challenge and to be represented as well. I mean, maybe that's not the most popular opinion by the people who are currently doing it, but at the same time, I think it's really true. And that in the coding is something that is like you get a computer and it's something that you can do it, you can challenge this. And it's, I think that there's opportunities for women, there's opportunities internationally. You find somebody to market it and the world needs people out there representing their ideas, their thoughts, diversity. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. This is the only way that we're going to solve the problems is if we listen to different voices, and there needs to be voices from different cultures and um, different, just all the different perspectives out there saying what they think is going to save the world.
No, I agree with you on that. It's a very interesting point. I truly hope that, one day AI could help us basically save the planet because, um, you know, like you said earlier, we have like a ticking time clock basically. Like, are we going to survive in the next 100 years? Who knows, right? And it's super tricky, with global warming, with climate change. Like, sometimes you wonder what can be done. Is it too late? Is it not too late? All these things are like running through our minds right now. So
Well, it's scary to use your voice now because with cancel culture and with all the security issues out there, you speak up, and with AI and with the internet, it's everything is out there forever, and so it's hard to use your voice and to put yourself out there. So it's also one of the most important things you can do is um, to think differently and to use your voice creatively and constructively to try to solve these issues.
I think the thing that a lot of people need is hope that, there is a better future, because everyone is so worried about certain things that might or might not, have any impact on them. So yeah, I think the possibility of hope is a good one, and hopefully, people, AI, can work together in finding a solution to what we have. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have one of the things you asked me about was uh, you you asked me about Elon Musk. You had a question about Elon Musk about um, or you mentioned him earlier about his concerns and um, something another word for concern is interest, right? And I think that AI is very interesting. And if you look at what Elon Musk has done, and again, I'm not an expert on him, I don't know him, but if you look at his track record, he's done stuff with space, he's done stuff with Tesla, with Twitter, and with making Twitter more of a free speech, with with all these things. And what he's looking for is here's something that you think is set in stone, and where's the space, right? Where not the literal space, but also the wiggle room, right? where is where is the opportunity, where's the interest, where is something that I thought was fixed that I can find some mobility in, right? And so for me, this is something that I do a lot with my writing, with my thinking, is I look for something that is I think is fixed, right? I see an archetype, I see mythology, and you think this is fixed, but where's the wiggle room? Where's the change, right? And so my advice to people when they look at AI or when they look at a problem or when they look at a challenge, you say, "Oh wow, this is really heavy. This is a big conflict, or this is a big problem." Well, okay, it's really big, but there's always going to be a little bit of like something that's like, where's the interest? Where's the, I think that it's a concern, but there's a little bit of like, there's a movement there, and then go for that. And then something that you think was like massive and immovable is actually exciting and interesting, and you can start playing with it, and it becomes inspiring instead of daunting.
No, that's a great point. I agree with you on that. And I think that this journey that we're going to go on is going to be very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's like, is it attacking or are you collaborating? And once people see it as a collaboration, it's going to be a whole different conversation. And it's the questions you ask are not like, what are you doing to me? It's like, no, what are we doing together? How are we moving forward? How are we going to be solving problems together? And this is really going to be, it's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother what's a collaboration, a whole nother movement. And this is where the where it needs to move to open up.